isn't that fancy? I hope that worked. It looked good from here anyway. Fancy ass countdown timer and a little graphic with Tune It Over on it for our second week. What's this, 5th episode? Welcome back. Many of you tuning in after the fact, but even a few of you getting on a winning streak for tuning in live, which is decent. So thanks for that. Thanks for joining me in your lunch break. A few things that we're going to discuss today. And the first one I want to get stuck right into, which is, do you have to be able to do something to treat something in that direction? There was something that kind of kicked off on Twitter about that, where someone had tweeted quite arrogantly about the fact that if physios can't do squats, they shouldn't give out squats. But it opened a can of worms about specificity and competence. Then I found out this morning that it's World Physiotherapy Day, World PT Day. I want to talk about whether we should care or not, whether those sorts of things, those awareness moments are still useful. And then Jemma Oliver's going to join us to talk about some changes to the COVID guidance, particularly in and around private practice. What we should be wearing for PPE and things like that has changed again, and looks like we should be wearing visors to protect the eyes. And so I'm going to get her in just to talk a bit about that. She's been heading up the COVID support group that's proven very popular. Over 3,000 people, therapists, joined that and discuss things on there. And it kind of kicked off about visors yesterday. So I wanted to get her in at the end of the show to talk a little bit about that. So the first thing, though, so it came up on social media, and I definitely, it's sort of thing that I just don't typically engage with anymore, just because it's a bit farcical. But someone's, I think, an account called Squat University or something like that. I think they're clearly really into squats, and maybe in like an SNC page or something. And it was suggesting that if you can't do it, you shouldn't coach it, you shouldn't teach it, you shouldn't prescribe it, you shouldn't advocate for it. I don't know. And it basically was this premise that we've seen in various different things, which is where do you need to be able to do something yourself? And then in this instance, it was a squat. Now, my opinion on this, my position on it, the thing that I'd love to pick your brains on is, I just think that the whole industry that we're in is really important for us to empathize and to not have to necessarily have experienced exactly what is being presented in front of us, and it's unlikely that we're going to. And therefore, that same extension is that you don't necessarily need to be someone that participates in every which thing, or as I think it'd be wise for you to have ever done it. It'd be very strange if I ever met a therapist, for example, that had never done a version of a squat. In fact, that they're going to stand up off a chair, they're likely to. But even a resisted squat or a barbell squat, whatever it might be, usually someone's experienced it. But do they need to participate in it, be good at it, be strong at it? No. Someone argued, of course, it's ableism of a sort. The fact that there couldn't be a disabled therapist or coach that can't actually do that for whatever reason, or someone that's even injured at the time, and not be able to dish that out. So it was a really narrow way of putting it. But I think the reason I've brought it up here is not just because of that. It's actually, I feel like it's an extension to why we could extend that to pretty much anything, and that there's this temptation to get carried away down the line of supposed specialized expertise in particular exercises or particular movements or particular disciplines in such a way that we couldn't empathize appropriately, understand the mechanics and they don't even need to be the mechanics, just understand the function of the movement and therefore be able to advocate for it for the reasons that we need. The ability to do it yourself just doesn't tell you much about the therapist at all, apart from this arrogance of this tweet. But aside from that, it's a sort of a semi-popular opinion in a few different ways. And I think that what I wanted to bring up and push back on a little bit, and also to sort of court your opinions on, a few of them coming in, so thank you so much for your comments. Just not allowing myself to get too distracted in that direction just yet, apart from Jack asking if I've had a haircut for a second day running. No, I haven't had a haircut since yesterday. Thank you for that. But that's why I don't try and get myself distracted by the comments straight away. Right, I'm getting to that in a second. But what is happening to us, for us to 1 minute be rightly advocating that we look to empathize appropriately, hear people's story, try and understand it, put yourself in their shoes to some extent, and try and understand their experiences that are surrounding their problem, their pain, their condition, their injury, or just their life. And then in the next minute, sometimes we're inferring and suggesting that no matter how much we try to do that, we're never going to really understand it properly, and therefore we need a plethora of different people that can have a marry up their lived experience to truly understand it. Like, that's a frustrating failure of empathy. Now, I know it's not especially too tightly linked to this squatting example, but we'll come back to that. But I just think that, generally speaking, there's this notion that only to have experienced something, only to have done something, only to regularly do something gives you the qualification, the expertise of a sort to actually then advocate for it, teach it, train it, etc. And that seems to be a similar logic to people that are then saying that, unless you've gone through something, you wouldn't be able to then empathize with that person. This is just a really dangerous road to go down. It basically disqualifies so many therapists from really helping people and training their understanding and their style in such a way that can really elicit someone's narrative and then appropriately link it. I am really concerned about that theme. And this is just one almost silly example of it. But I think that people are making that mistake all the time. And that people are delineating into so many different categories and suggesting, oh, imagine if you're triaging someone and think, oh, I'll put that knee pain patient in with Steve because Steve's had a knee injury of a similar flavour recently, or not so Steve's good with knees, or that you're then, and I've seen it done whereby with no request of the patient, it comes through, let's say as triaging a standard low back pain complaint of a middle-aged woman, and through no request of the patient and no information, to infer that only a female therapist would be able to understand that woman's lived experience closely enough to appropriately treat it, or vice versa. You're booking blokes in with blokes. You delineate various different ways based on, not from their request, but from your assumption that only someone that categorically matches based on your assumptions is therefore going to be the best person to treat. Therein lies a real major problem. Feels like a digression perhaps from the squatting example, but it's a failure of empathy. It's inferring that you need to be in close proximity to whatever it is to be a good therapist in that direction. And it's not. I just think it's nonsense, and I think it's dangerous if we go too far down that path. Now, to a few comments on this. So that's brilliant. Thank you so much for these flooding in. Katie Napton, this is what I was looking for. Thank you for your comments and things on my topic, but let's be honest, I want to know what you think about the intro for those that saw it. So yeah, thanks, Katie. That's brilliant. Melissa, brilliant. Thank you very much. Critical reasoning and evidence-based practice, of course, are what's going to be central to how we can apply principles rather than just the fact that we've done something or can do something, which is great. Katie's then weighed in. Ridiculous. We need to be able to understand process, movement, muscles, joints involved and appreciate it, not be able to actually do it. It's irrelevant. I agree, of course. Melissa, again, thank you so much for this. We have critical reasoning skills, clinical expertise, and hopefully research-based thinking. We need to be bold and brave and not become like general medical practitioners who defer to specialists readily. Yeah, we need a diverse skill set, don't we, Melissa? I totally agree. And I think that it sounds like I don't want to lump you in, but it sounds like you're agreeing with me that if we were to make the mistake of category error and lumping things in, sorry, not lumping things in, but over delineating, then we're going to lose some general skill and cop out a little bit and over refer perhaps is a great point there that you're making. Let's have a look what Scarsbrook said. If all counsellors needed to have been through divorce, loss, sexual dysfunction, poor relationships, childhood trauma, mental health challenges, warfare, chronic pain, and childbirth, there would be a small pool of counsellors out there. Thanks, Matt. I mean, you'd qualify, of course, for the most part, from what I can tell there, mate. But I agree. It's a great point, and I think that's what seems so silly about it, is it just doesn't seem feasible. Pragmatically, it just doesn't seem feasible. But on a principle level, we talked a bit about principles yesterday, and saying that, although it seems bizarre, yesterday, for example, for those that haven't tuned into that, we talked a bit about the free press and about disrupting the free press, and how it feels silly to almost stand up for something that are very powerful organisations that were able to print the next day. But it was more that, in principle, do we want to attack free speech in that way? And we don't. And in this case, it's kind of that, in principle, even though pragmatically what Matt's saying is absolutely true, in principle, though, do we want to train empathy and understand things in that direction? Or do we want to have a narrow field in which we feel that we can transmit our skill set, both from understanding the person that's in front of us needs to be somewhere close to where we are, and then what we're dishing out is only things that we understand because we do, be that movements, treatments, etc., or the conditions and pathologies that people have. I just think that is such it's a real rotten logic, in my opinion. So I'm concerned about that. So thank you so much for your comments from that. It's loads coming in here, YouTube, Facebook. Thank you so much, all those of you tuning in various different places. And this is a lovely comment. I mean, I want that to be your name, Dick Piano. But today I saw a patient with elbow pain. I had no idea what I was doing. Now, again, I hope that's your name. Great name. But also the ability for us to humbly understand and know what it is that we're capable of, independent of our ability and skill to have it, both skill to or experience to have been through something, but also then the actual act of dishing that out as an exercise or a treatment modality and things like that, is that having experienced it once or twice and knowing what it's about is one thing, but the inference is being suggested that you need to be participating in a particular type of activity in order to advocate it, and that just seems like people get carried away. So next thing I wanted to talk about is that apparently it's World PT Day, World Physio Day. I think what I would suggest is these are awareness days, aren't they? They're advocacy days. You see them all over the place, and sometimes they're super relevant and they catch on across wider culture, and sometimes it's just that, there's only 365 days a year, and there's certainly more causes and professions and organizations than there are days of the year. So you've always got this double up, and I'm sure there's World Hot Chocolate Day and things like that, right? People that celebrate their own favorite thing. Now, do we need a World Physio Day? I'm not bothered. I don't think we need to, but if you're going to, then fine. I think that what we would suggest, though, what I would suggest is that if it's going to be done, there needs to be some sort of strategy around it. There needs to be something where, is it just generically just promoting the existence and utility of physiotherapy more broadly? I always get concerned about the fact that, generically, I always think I'm agnostic as to whether or not it would be a net good for society if exactly what we have now just got proliferated more. If it was just that as it stands, the quality of what we have is all standard, and then we just proliferate the quantity, would that be a net good for society? I'm not even sure. I think we need to bear in mind that if you're going to do it, might it have a purpose? I'm a bit torn, really. I'm interested in what you guys thought. Did you know it was World Physio Day? Are you bothered? Could it be better leveraged? Obviously, as I've talked about before, I'm more interested in the sort of MSK industry than I'm necessarily the physiotherapy profession. However, the physiotherapy profession is a really interesting and useful vehicle to further the goals of improving MSK care and societal health. And so, I'm certainly not anti-physio, anti-physical therapy, but it's one of, for me, it's something that I'm more passionate about what's underneath that than just generically cheerleading a profession. And doesn't mean that shouldn't be done. You can celebrate in whatever which way you want. But did anyone know it was World Physio Day? Do you think it needs to exist? If it's going to, what could be done differently and better? And if next year you're in charge of it, what would you do? And do professional delineations matter more or less than industries and sectors in which you've got more in common? I feel like I've got more in common with a musculoskeletal podiatrist than I have often with a palliative care physio. Now, I've got lots in common with a palliative care physio. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying I've got more in common often with an MSK podiatrist or an occupational therapist doing functional rehab. And I just think that there's a few things there that I just find interesting, and I think that the representation really matters. We've got a few comments coming in. A few hanging over from last time. On YouTube, Jack March, you knew because Physiomatic's got tagged a few hundred times on Twitter. Matt Scarsbrook asking who declares these particular days. Yeah, I don't know. Where did he pick their days? It seems strange. Jack's suggesting direct the promo World Physio Day. Let's get active for health or something. I'm not sure that's even grammatically literate, so I'm just going to skip over that. Thanks, Jim. There's another lovely comment from Melissa. Thanks for your contributions today, Melissa. World Physiotherapy Day may not seem important to physios in countries with developed health systems. However, for many countries where physiotherapists constantly fight for recognition, respect, practice protection, this is a really important day. World Physiotherapy develops enormous literature and marketing resources in many languages to assist physiotherapists canvas their skills and market. That's a lovely point, and certainly one that needs to be brought up. I think the World Physiotherapy Day is obviously more relevant to other countries than to ours. Maybe, good point made there. But I think it's interesting to know as to, do we have evidence and suggestion that these, as a moment in time, that's going to help a developing nation to advocate for physiotherapy? And is the understanding of physiotherapy and how the parameters are on that well defined, so that then it would be appropriately dissociated from health advocacy and awareness and things like that? So certainly we need to think about the broader context. If it's the world, it really matters. But I think that we've got to understand it would be better for, I imagine, the developing nations of which it might be of more utility if other countries knew about it, were to be able to join in, were to be able to feed resources forward into those nations or to those communities that are advocating for it. I dare say that it's more important in countries in which there's, some countries there's no or few physiotherapists at all in the country, right? So it's definitely well worth advocacy. Whether you need a day for that, I don't know. Or if you do, surely it'd be better if it was a celebration and that nation was to say, look, we've got very few physiotherapists. Look at these other nations in which do, and there's this advocacy that goes on, and it is actually something that's better known and therefore better cared about, and there's something a bit edgy about its marketing. For example, if you were to lean on functional restoration as being a theme, so that people don't, in the developing nation states of the Western ones, where you've then got these basically making the same mistakes again, repeating orthopedic practice, whereby physiotherapy is just a technical tool for years and things. Unfortunately, we hear from therapists from developing nations that tell us that those mistakes are being made. Right, so funding comes in, be that aid or government or taxation funded or otherwise. They then build a hospital, an MRI scanner that no one is trained to use. Physiotherapists might be present, but they're there just as post-op for more orthopedic surgeons, and so they build a top-down model. So advocacy for physiotherapy in developing nations, if it was appropriately linked to development in evidence-informed practice and policy, then hopefully they wouldn't need to make the same mistakes again. So I just feel like better awareness is going to be relevant across the board, even though fundamentally I do agree, and it's a great point there, Melissa, about the fact that it might matter more in other countries. Now, what I want to do is bring in our third topic, which was a bit of a COVID update on PPE. News yesterday from Public Health England, and therefore transmitted through Physio First and the CSP, etc., that you should be wearing visors. I wanted to get my friend Jemma Oliver on just to discuss that. She's part of the COVID. Well, she launched the COVID support group, which is proven very popular on Facebook. So, fortunately, if it all works, then this year. Jemma, can you hear us? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Nice one. I can. Now, as what happened last time, I thought I managed to do a split screen last time, but I can't. There we go.
There you go.
Does that work?
I have to let you know that my view right now is, I think, what you might call the theatre of dreams. Is that what some random football club is called in there? So my Salford Keys view at the moment. So I could have had it as my background, but that's too. I can't do that. So I'm just going to just stand and look at it instead.
Staunch Liverpool fan, of course, but yeah, I haven't been to Old Trafford in a long time now. It's upsetting. Excited for us to get back there. But yeah, thanks for joining me, mate. And this might be something that crops up in little waves, I imagine, and you can come back and do bits of updates. But there was a change in. It's been a hot topic, and one that you've been very involved in, which is obviously PPE provisions, policies, and guidance as to how we should be working safely in this current landscape. What's the news and what's changed?
I think this came about obviously from our group. We've got a great community of people who are very vocal, which is great, and we develop themes. And what happened is, I think Public Health England produced some update. I don't think it was hugely different, but what it was clear that there was a big difference between the ability or the recommendation to wear a mask or a mask and a visor. Now, from the 20th of August, this obviously created a huge bit of noise and confusion on the group, to which we got in contact with Sue Hayward-Giles at the CSP, who very kindly agreed to sort of look into it and to maybe go back to Public Health England and get some clarification. Now, I just need to say that I am, I'm replicating information. I don't have all the answers, but it does appear we do have the clarification now that if you need your public liability insurance to be valid, I'm talking from a CSP point of view now, that you want to carry on working, if track and trace becomes positive, then you need to be.
No, I don't know if it's just me, but I seem to have lost Jemma there. That's a shame. Hopefully she can get back on and find us again. That's annoying. See if she's... let's let Jemma know. Seem to have lost Jem, but hopefully we can get her back on. Now, before we do, lovely comments coming in. Again, it's really cool, this software. It's coming in from different streams, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. So, theme for this is useful. Here we go. Right, so Melissa said the theme for this year is restoration of function after severe respiratory illness. Certainly very topical right now, isn't it? Of course, that. Now, what I would say is that it's not, if I don't know that, it is not through lack of being present and active in the online space and advocacy for better health. And I'm a physiotherapist by background, so maybe I'm not paying attention in the right places. And if I'm not, why am I not? What is it that's not, directing my eyes in that direction? If I'm not, and I'm someone that's actually quite attentive in many ways to this sort of stuff, and would be behind it with the right campaign and messaging and things, then I'd be fascinated to know who else would be missing it as well, and how many people don't necessarily engage with it, and what we could do to change that, if in fact it is a good idea and is necessary advocacy. So, it's always interesting for me as to whether or not that's useful. Now, it looks like we've managed to get Jemma back. I don't know if it was the technical issue on our part. We need to learn as lessons. But Jemma, are you back with us?
I'm back. It was my laptop not having any charge. I think that's day part one.
Amateur.
Amateur.
Well, you're back. go on, pick up where you left off then. So
Yeah,
you were sharing information that you got via the CSP.
Yeah, so I think what we found, obviously, in the past sort of 24 hours, and the Physio First and the CSP.
And now it's a signal thing. Have we stole Jem? What a shame. So we had a guest on last week. Ollie Coburn joined me. It worked an absolute dream, and now here we are getting glitches for Jemma in the final minutes of this. I will tell you what I know about that topic, although Jem might be able to correct me at least in the comments or something, or she might jump on for the last few minutes. But essentially, there is new guidance out from Public Health England, and then the CSP and Physio First are therefore, and other organisations, no doubt, different professional bodies are doing a similar thing where they are then not applying a major filter through that information and simply sharing that within the context of which their professions then will exist. And so if the PHE suggests that certain procedures or certain forms of contact require visor as well as mask, then that's what they will then share. And so yesterday, that's what the guidance update suggested, really, was that you think about the majority of practice, particularly in MSK, neuro, close proximity, assessment-based care, then they were suggesting visor wearing, from what I understand. Now, let's try and go third time lucky. It looks like we've got signal, and it looks like Gemma's back with us. So see if you might need to correct me, Gem.
I'm not very good at this game. It is just signal. I promise I'm not doing anything wrong. In a nutshell, before I get cut off again, I think if we are generally classing, there is some new update from Physio First. We can make it available. I'm sure Jack will retweet it. They have gone back to Public Health England just to double check. And from a PLI point of view and a track and trace efficiency, if you want to carry on working, if they do get a positive track and trace, you do now need to be wearing a visor if we class most people as medium risk. Now, there is obviously lots of different connotations. What we try to do is make this as simple as possible. From my point of view, and in my opinion, if I was working, or as I am working in clinical practice, my advice is just to wear the visor, because I think that then rules out any confusion. So if you are confused or you're unsure, as frustrating as it is and as it appears to be for many, I think we just need to wear it. Now, it's likely that this will sort of change, and it may change as everything's changing from a policy point of view. And, Physio First and the CSP have, promised to keep us up to date with this. And I can appreciate the frustration, but we just need to get on board. I think we need to be aware of the risks, as we all are, and make it as safe as possible. And if that at the moment is wearing a visor and a mask, I think that's what we have to do, just to make it as simple as possible.
Some people talk about, they're just creating internal risk assessments and policies, etc. But in these instances, even if it is excessive in both opinion and fact, then it could well be that insurance are going to be interested in and may well be looking at this if you breach PHE guidance as well as your professional body guidance. Suggesting that the insurance might not pay out, or you might not be covered and things, and therefore you're safe and sorry, in your opinion.
And we've already seen this, haven't you? There's already a huge ongoing situation where we were never told to close. So there's there's lots of cases where insurance companies are reluctantly paying out. Now, I think there is some evidence where they are paying, but we are going to face this issue where there is no clear guidelines, or the guidelines are clear from a Public England point of view at the moment. But if we choose to not follow some of the guidance that we've been given, especially when we go back and clarify it, I do think that we put ourselves at risk of not being covered. And from my point of view, why wouldn't you just do everything that you can, even though it does? I think one of the main issues, and we are going to sort of look into this, I think, is there's a big discrepancy between what the NHS are doing from a physio point of view and what private practice are doing. And I do completely understand that, because it does seem to be massively different, the guidance that we're being given and what NHS policy is doing. Now, we have to follow, if you're a member of the CSP and they produce this guidance from the Physio First point of view in private practice, that's what we have to follow. I don't have all the answers to that. I agree that it does seem to be hugely different. I don't know what the answer is there, but
Sure.
we have to
Yeah,
follow
I mean,
it.
I think this will inevitably roll on, and certainly really helpful for you to be able to jump on and give us some clarification as we know it. It's always a moving picture. So we'll probably end up talking again, no doubt, not just about PPE, but obviously we'll chat to you about a few different bits and pieces. But thanks a lot. I know unfortunately we're out of time. We need to try and keep this to time, but no doubt we'll be able to check back in as this changes. All right, but have a great day. We'll
No
see you later.
problem.
And for those that didn't catch the start, you get a little piece of the outro, fancy graphic. So we'll see you tomorrow, 12:30. Thanks a lot, Jemma.